Hi, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Business as Activism podcast. I'm your host, feminist leadership coach and mentor, Elijah Selby, pronouns she, her. I am here with two of my best friends, Lisa Callahan and Kari Morin. They are both really phenomenal coaches, leaders, women, uh, moms to boys, and Lisa also mom to a daughter. And they run they're hosts of an incredible podcast called The Things We Know. And I will be linking to their podcast for sure in the liner notes of this episode. Welcome, Kari and Lisa.
Thank you for having
Hello.
us.
So glad you're here. And before we jump in, I just want to give a little context. About a month ago, I listened to Kari and Lisa's episode on misogyny, and I was so blown away by it, inspired by it, excited about all the things they had to say. And I reached out to them pretty immediately and said, "Hey, would you come onto my podcast and have this conversation with me and my listeners?" And they said, "Yes, of course," because they're fucking awesome. We were supposed to record 2 weeks ago. I want to say today we are recording. It is November 7th, Thursday, November 7th, 2 days after the election. So we were supposed to record 2 weeks ago, and something happened that it didn't work out. And we rescheduled to today. With full awareness that it was going to be 2 days post-election. And certainly in the text thread in which we were making those plans, we all acknowledged hope that we would, be having a celebratory conversation. Not of course that it would mean misogyny had gone away, but that it still would be celebratory. And here we are. It is not celebratory.
I didn't just have hope, I had certainty.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
me too.
Again,
wanna
not
go
that
back.
misogyny was going away, but
Oh, no,
I
no.
felt very certain she was going to win.
I felt like we were gonna call it as like a battle one, not the war.
I like that
Yeah.
distinction. Yeah.
Or like just an advance that was it's so sorely needed.
Like an advance, I could imagine the relief I was going to feel. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so we're not feeling any of that at all.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, and it's
Stunned grief. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Rage.
Yeah.
Sad. Yeah. So much rage.
I shared with both of you this morning and with Melissa on our thread there that, I woke up feeling scared,
Mhm.
which is a really disempowering feeling. I'm not into it. I really want to get to the rage. And I think I'm getting there. Just hanging out with you guys talking about all this helps up the rage. Yeah. So we want this conversation to be a reflection on all our feelings, not just about the election, but about what we're witnessing going on in our country and globally, I will add, because I had people reach out. I told you guys I wrote an email yesterday and I had people reach out, actually, not just from America, but from all over the world, and people sharing what they're witnessing feels really scary to them too, and that they don't understand it. And I, wrote back saying, I don't quite understand it either. Like, I can understand pieces maybe, or there's moments where I'm like, oh, but then I'm like, wait, what? No, what the fuck? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a client in Spain who reached out to me saying, "This is a joke, right? Like everybody here honestly thinks this is your comedy shows." And I was like, "No, it's not a joke."
Yeah, and
This
I
was,
was also getting from all over the world
yeah.
texts and comments, and yeah.
Mm.
One of the women that wrote to me said that she's seen on social media Americans commenting to her or other foreigners, "Just keep out. You don't know what you're talking about. This doesn't affect you anyway," which of course shows the fucking ignorance, because of course it is because of globalization and because of the power that America is, our politics absolutely affect the world.
More than half the country or more than half the people who voted just put a big keep out sign on the country. So that's interesting. Those are
Yeah, I
interesting
mean, there's a
words.
lot of xenophobia and isolationism happening, obviously, right
Yeah.
now. Yeah. So, let's see, where do we begin? I mean, there's so many places, and I want to start with the quote that you guys say in your episode, a quote by Kate Mann, and that quote is, "Misogyny is the law enforcement branch of patriarchy."
Mhm.
And I think we're really seeing this in spades right now. Like on steroids. Like it's like the game has been so fucking turned. The volume is so, let me change metaphors. The volume has been turned up so high on the misogyny um as law enforcement, as literally keeping us down. That's I'm despondent about it.
Yeah.
And I think that, seeing like not like seeing Trump win and then seeing people commenting, gloating and being like delighted that he won is just like,
Mm. I want to presence the fact that I know Lisa and I, probably you too, like we tried to stay off yesterday. So we're still like, this is still so new. So this is fresh. And just even hearing you both share what people are saying is like giving me waves of emotion. So there's that. I also think that this isn't just about like the law enforcement of misogyny and racism. Make America great again, which no one's ever been able to define what's again, right? Is really like, and I don't know how to put this into eloquent words. I will find them at some point, but I don't know how. It is like we were never, if it was a game, because people in patriarchy love a good American sports ball game. If it was a game, we were never ahead. And so this need to make it a great, like, take it back, like they have had it all along. I don't understand this need to like take it back and don't let feminism or equality win. Like, and I know that's not exactly what anyone will admit to, but that's exactly how it feels. It's like
it does feel that way.
nothing got taken away from you. So like nothing got taken away from you, and yet you took it back and you're celebrating that. And what you don't see is that you just doubled down on racism and misogyny, and then it's being celebrated and it's out in the open, and it's taking my breath away in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's whatever again means, is it's like they're looking to the future and seeing a country that is more people of color than white people. They're seeing women in positions of power. And this is, we have to remember that this is relatively new, right? Women only got to have credit cards in their own name 50 years ago. Roe only happened in 1973. So even though for us it's been all of our lives, so to speak, for many people it's relatively new. I don't know if I'm being eloquent about this, but I think that's the thing that's so interesting is this fear of other, and I think part of the other is women,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
100%.
And so this idea that we have brains and bodily autonomy, like it just means that if we assert that for ourselves, then we're equal to men, and men just can't fucking take it.
Right. We're not even actually trying to take control over their bodies.
Exactly.
That's so weird.
We're not trying to take anything away from them. That's what's so weird. But they think we are.
It's
Because
perceived.
right? It's yeah.
And perception
Is reality.
always more powerful than fact.
Well, perception is what just voted. Because I heard
Perception is
it,
what just
like
voted.
all of us have stories, and as you know, I was at polls, like I heard it everywhere. I want to just go back to how you started this, because I do have the book right here from Kate Mann, and I've read it now twice, and I started like going through it again last night, like it's like nodding and crying. I like how she was trying to say, like, she's not even suggesting, because everyone gets all defensive, right? Oh, I'm not a racist, I'm not a misogynist, whatever. It's not about individual animosity, although I would argue that, but she presents it as like a cultural force, right? And it's disciplines it and has like conditioned women into conformity into traditional gender roles, because that's what they feel is safe.
Well, that's everything. I think so. I think that there's a lot of ways to look at this, many different angles to sides, and I think all of them are valid and important. And so the way that I come to the table always is, as you guys know, looking at it through a systems perspective. So like the system of patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and how those play such a huge role. And I like looking at them that way because they're things that we made up, and therefore there are things that we can tear down and replace. Like they are not truth as much as some people they're like they are our lived experience right now, but they are not truth in the way that people can mean like them to be inevitable. They are not. And I think that the system of patriarchy, you guys already know this, and anybody that's listened to my podcast know this, but right, it relies on the binary. The binary is at the very crux of its power, which is an us, them, win, lose mentality. And so for sure, white men in power, white cis het men in power have been threatened by things like a black man being becoming president. So that it does look like something's been taken away from them from that point of view, even if it's not conscious. Like I actually think maybe it's not I don't, like for some people there's overt racism. They'll be like a fucking whatever, blah, blah, blah. But for other people, it's something like almost just embedded in a like I always like to like the glasses they're wearing and the lens through which they're seeing it is patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and they just don't know enough to take the glasses off. Um, and women are affected by it as well, right? And so we talk
Mhm.
about the white women that vote for Trump.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I don't think that women who internalize misogyny know that they do that. This is just them. And if they can't see it, I don't know how we break through it.
Right. That's it,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to it. And also I think that like what's so interesting about internalized misogyny is so we tend as human beings naturally to adopt points of views or philosophies for life that support our way of life, not the other way around. We don't like live our life. This is a generalization, but it tends to be true. So women, let's say white women, um, um, should we say Christian? I think often Christian. I don't know.
I mean, often, but I would, but again, even that kind of Christianity is patriarchal,
Well,
right?
no, exactly. That's my point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like I was thinking, okay, who are these women that vote for Trump? There tend to be white Christian women, tend to be. So, like within that subculture of people, how they perceived their internal, I think, here's my thought, and I'd love your thoughts. My thought is their internalized misogyny and patriarchy and white supremacy has them believing they benefit from the system.
Correct.
And that is why they vote because it feels very scary. Like, what happens if this system that like is kind of, making sure they're closed, housed, fed, children can go to school, have opportunity, what happens if that system is taken away? I mean, what it feels like to them, maybe totally subconsciously, is that everything like that it's mayhem and like it does because of this us them mentality, right? Because of the binary. So these are my thoughts. Curious, if that if what you think of that, because it's like that binary. I just like really we say the word binary and it sounds so banal, but it is so fucking dangerous. It is so
Oh,
fucking dangerous. Yeah.
yeah. Again, it goes back to fear, and the inability to understand that there are other possibilities. I mean, it strikes me, and I don't, I, this is my vision of this, that it is also very tied to not living anywhere where it is diverse. When you look at the map, the red is always rural, and thank God for rural humans. Thank
Yeah.
God for them. But if you have never come across a woman who understands that she is and has her own autonomy, if and just thinks that men rule the world, if you've never come across a woman of color, a trans person, a LGBTQ person, you don't know any better. And so there is a baked in ignorance that I don't want to blame them for, but it's like if you could just get out and just expand your
Mhm.
horizons, you know?
Yeah, my kids ask that a lot. They used to ask that a lot. Why is it only blue in cities? I'm like, because we cooperate. We have to live near each other.
Yep.
Like we have to really be faced with the parts of. I always actually, to switch it for a second. I used to say every young person should live in DC because you have the most powerful, the least powerful.
Mm.
Trying to live together in this weird dynamic where the federal government isn't even paying rent to the locals. To use that land so and it's set up that way. It's so messed up, but it's true. I mean, I don't live in the most ethnically diverse part of the country. We know that in Portland, and there's really sick laws from Oregon that are part of why that's the case historically. Even though, and actually, Portland and Eugene, their population is why the state goes blue. The entire rest of the state is red. So it is a really interesting, tense place to drive through, and it's because we're here in the city trying to figure this out for schools and people of all income levels and all these immigrants, and they're not like at the store with them, they're not
Mm-mm.
in the schools with them. So it is fascinating too. And yes, they kind of are. I mean, they're near a lot of native areas, right? So like I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just saying like they aren't confronted. So to your point, it's really hard when that it makes up a lot of the voting base. But there are cities where I'm sorry, my dog just fell. Uh, there are cities where that is like there's still a lot of angry people that live there and they're voting red too. So I guess I can't say it's all the rural people that just
20,
control
20%
the
of
vote.
San Franciscans voted for Trump.
Yeah,
20%. So I think
that's
that's a
yeah,
fairly significant number for what the city is. And
Yeah.
I
yeah.
don't know who they are.
Well, I mean,
I don't know who those people are. They keep to themselves. They kind of know better in some, or I shouldn't say that. That sounds kind of rude and patronizing, but they don't advertise that they are Trumpers in this city.
I don't know that we'll get into this today, but you mentioned this, I think, before we hit record. And I think this is something you will cover, Elijah, and you might too. But what's interesting is how many people voted what they say is economically and so, for themselves and their family. And I think the ways sexism and misogyny and patriarchy are making that the number one reason, like by far in the early exit polls. I know that granularly that's going to be looked at even more, and so that's currently what some people are saying. And I think that like people going that way is a clinging to a fear that is really
Yes.
baked into this whole system.
Yeah,
A fear that's baked in and also is completely incorrect. Every time the economy has tanked, it has been under a Republican.
yeah.
Every time. So again, they are choosing, and I'm going to stand by this, they are choosing to be ignorant about that because all you have to do is Google recessions and you will find that
Yeah.
the presidents over recessions, the presidents over the worst economies are Republicans. So they are
And
actively choosing to ignore that fact.
well, and explain the fact why people think it's the current president that's causing it, right? Because if they think right now is the economy is so bad and they blame the current president, they're not understanding basic economics.
But
Right.
also what's interesting, if I may, and again this maybe goes off a little bit, but the one of the things that I was buoyed by, especially at the end, was that, and I don't know his name, but that professor, he comes out of American University in DC, who had predicted the last 9 of the 10
Oh
presidents
yeah.
correctly. And the only one he got wrong was Bush Gore. Unfortunately, he got this one wrong as well. And he has like 9 factors, and one of them is if the economy is doing well. And that's what's so interesting is the economy technically is doing well. So that was one of the reasons he thought that the party in power would stay in power. But and this again, this is what we were talking about beforehand. The disinformation around the
Yeah.
economy is the thing, and that disinformation came from outside the house.
Yep, outside of the country. Yes,
Yep.
this is we were talking about this before I hit record and how I actually think this is so important. I admit that it's been on my periphery as a concern and something just like hit me so hard about it. because of the Heather Cox Richardson newsletter, which I highly recommend people subscribe to. She's really brilliant. And she talked about what Russia has done in terms of creating a false reality in our country through the use of technology in a way that just, sometimes people word things in a way that hits you and you understanding drops in. And it just hit me so hard about how can we combat this totally false reality that people are believing, and like how easy it is to believe a false reality, even if something's different right in front of you. That's kind of fucking scary. And
Yep.
Also, why hasn't America made this priority number one in protecting our democracy to fight off this disinformation? I watch too many crime shows to think that we can't possibly do this. Like, isn't there like that whiz kid computer person out there that can stop all this from happening? It's like that's where my mind goes. But
John Cusack or something, or I don't know.
What'd you say? Yeah, John Cusack.
Matthew Broderick.
Yes, that's
Matthew Broderick from War Games.
It's Matthew Broderick. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just was picturing one of the two of them, but you're right. This is not me.
Okay, so shout out to John Cusack in general.
Right. Absolutely.
Why not?
Chicago boy.
Yeah. So like, how do we combat that? I will say a friend that lives in Florida, just told me briefly about two friends, like one that's quite wealthy, and is by all accounts, well, she's a woman, she has a daughter, she's a caring person by all accounts, and is absolutely a Trumper. And why? Because quote unquote business. And then she has a single mom friend who basically said, yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump just because I think it'd be better for business. That was the throwaway comment.
I mean, again, the man has run every business he has ever owned into the ground.
Yeah.
There is a thing on the web called Google. Try it.
Well, these people live in Florida, and you know what they think? They think Florida is going to get a lot of attention and money, and that actually might happen. But it's not the point. But even if that was the point, and even if that was true, I think to our point that we were talking about, that weird, like, I can't imagine not thinking about the impact on other human beings. Yeah. I can't imagine. And yet clearly these people don't care. Oh, I forgot that the woman that's wealthy that was voted, that my friend said, well, what about, like grabbing pussies and rape and all. And she's like, I'm not voting for him because I mean, I think he's a douchebag, but business. And it's like, how do you come to that worldview? I can't imagine it.
This is just so upsetting for me. And there's so many directions I could go with this, because I was just thinking, oh, Portland's screwed. We were called an anarchist state under
he's already
regime.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I'm so sorry. And I want you to
go ahead.
Oh my God, he's also listing out how he's going to retaliate against California too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I've heard that. You're fucked. Yeah. No, but I was going to say what you just brought up about, I don't care about that. Like, I've had people I know and love say, well, he's disgusting. I'm voting for policies, to which I always say, what fucking policies? But when you say you're pro-life, and that's your vote, what do you, as someone who really is pro-birth, because let's be real, what do you want to do about rape culture then, since you just elected someone who's, been not just once, and himself, is a proponent of just grabbing people, and will, whether women like it or not, right? Like, what do you want to do to prevent that? Like, do you have any care in the world about the actual treatment of women that ends up in a lot of unwanted pregnancies? So there's just a million directions to go with that it's so false. It's such a false morality thing. It's disgusting to me. I don't like, essentially what we just said was, I'm pro control over women. Let's just be real.
I mean, you and I just saw the post. I don't know, Elijah, if you saw it, that one of our friends, Michelle, posted Nick Fuentes, one of the people in the manosphere, said, it was right, like, your body, my choice.
My choice. I didn't know Michelle posted
your body,
it. Another
my choice.
person another
Forever
person I
is what he
follow
said.
Yeah.
Forever.
posted it.
Yeah.
Forever.
Your
Yeah.
body, period. My choice, period. Forever.
Yep.
Period.
I don't know which one of you I told this, but I reposted it and Instagram took it down for language. Interesting.
I mean, that's the kind of shit that's going to continue to happen as we move forward. I mean, I don't know if I said this to you. I think I did say this to you yesterday, Kari, but I think the canary in the coal mine that I tried not to pay attention to around all of this was when Jeff Bezos didn't allow the Post and the jackass that owns the LA Times. And even somebody like I was listening to I think it was actually Nicole Wallace, and somebody on there was talking about it. Even Warren Buffett, even Jamie Dimon, these people kind of did it behind the scenes where they were like, I'm voting for it, but I'm not going to say it. Um, there was this aspect of they believe he's going to win, and that's why they're keeping their mouth shut. That was the canary in the coal mine a couple of weeks ago that I just didn't pay attention to. And it's yeah, I don't know, we're fucked.
Yeah.
We're talking before this too, like how I mean, I can be angry and upset and frightened at a certain point, and I've heard this from some people I really respect in the last couple of days who are bewildered and angry too. Like, how are we going to get to a place where we can understand the pain behind this compliance, this this kind of voting? Like, what is your fear that we can actually sit down and understand so that we can actually get to a place where you want to fight for your own autonomy, where you want to fight for your daughter's autonomy? Like, I don't understand how you would block that. And hating it is not getting me anywhere. So like, how do we get to a place where we understand it so that we can like learn from each other?
I think, to your point, Kari, this is another thing that I think human beings do, which we can fool ourselves into thinking that's not our problem, meaning I'll be okay for whatever it is. And here's an example. All of our mutual friend Shar went to go vote in New Jersey, and she overheard, I think I told one of you this, I don't know. She overheard a young woman speaking to somebody that like she was leaning into a pickup truck, and she overheard the young woman say, well, I'm on birth control, so I don't care about abortion. Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that obviously super ignorant comment because you can still get pregnant on birth control. So we already know, okay, there's some problems here. But then we get into the like that inability to understand that like things impact other people even if they don't impact us, right? Like that inability to have what compassion for other people, or to understand. It's sort of like when men are accused of rape or sexual harassment and a friend will go, well, a woman friend might say, well, he never was that way with me. It's like, and so what? He looks like he was that way with others. It doesn't matter if it doesn't affect you. If it's like let's understand that things affect other people, even if they don't like affect. It might help me.
No,
out.
I mean,
I feel like I'm not. Yeah.
No, I think to me, that's, I think the thing that is the saddest about this is like the knowledge that so many people are like, I've got mine, fuck you. And so not only can you get pregnant on birth control, but also someday she's going to get pregnant and she's going to want that baby. And then, goddess forbid, she's going to have trouble with that child. She might miscarry. We have already seen with the Trump abortion bans, the women who are miscarrying children they want, and they die because the doctors don't know if the fetus is viable, and they wait and they wait and they test and they test, and then the women die.
Yep.
So this, I've got mine, fuck you, is to me the thing that is the most upsetting. And to go to your question, Kari, about how do we understand it, I guess the thing that I don't get is that if you listened to what VP Harris was presenting, what Michelle Obama presented, what, in the grand scheme, like she was telling us all the ways that she was going to help us. You
Yeah.
know, how credit to buy your first home, credits for small businesses, making home health care okay under Medicare. Like she had plans and policies, and everybody just went la 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 la.
I know. It's
They just did.
infuriating.
And I don't know that we can understand it because it is a mindset that we have never had and could never have. I don't know if there's a way to understand it. I also don't think we need to know the how right now. I guess it's a work in progress. But at the same time, right now as I sit here, what I see is I've got mine, fuck you. That's what I see. And
Yeah.
I am angry and I'm going to stay angry and I don't care about those people. I'm just going to be straight up. Now, I hope that changes. I am in a very nihilistic place right now. My husband last night was like, Jesus Christ. And I was like, uh-huh. Yeah. And I'm going to stay there until I'm not going to press it down. Like I'm going to stay there until I'm done. But I'm open to figuring it out. But I've been trying to figure this out since he came down that goddamn golden escalator in 2015.
Hell
We're
yeah.
almost 10
Yeah.
years in and I still can't fucking figure it out. So I don't know how
And,
that's going to change.
and he's not the scariest to me. I think his vice president, who could
Oh,
very likely take over because this guy's pretty old, is even
yep,
scarier. But I mean,
totally.
yeah, to your point, it doesn't matter. Like there's people who know us who probably I don't even want to know who probably secretly voted for Trump, but there's people who know us. Nobody ever asked my husband, who is on a national board of OB hospitalists. Nobody ever asked him what was true and what wasn't. They want to believe all these
Hmm.
bogus lies about, how casual we are about just killing fetuses in certain states, and like they never ask nobody. So it is really hard to sympathize or understand. Like, oh, you just don't know. You're ignorant. I get that. I just want to know for the future, how the fuck is it even going to be possible to change minds and like actually turn this around? Because we have two new Supreme Court seats coming open under his next regime. So like this is fucking frightening. And there's no such thing as any sort of truth everyone can agree on anymore. Nobody's believing anybody's facts. It's like the meme yesterday that was like, you would rather think everybody, the media, experts, the actual people that things are about, like they're all lying to you. And then he's the only one telling you the truth. That's a choice.
Yeah, that is a choice.
That's not just ignorance. That is a choice.
Absolutely.
And I suspect in one answer to your question, Lisa, about like how to change that, and to your question too, and my question too, like how does that change is, I unfortunately think people are going to have to be personally affected in the absolute worst ways as a result of these policies in order for them to change, which means women are going to die. And even
you know what? Maybe
women are dying.
Women are dying. No, I know, but
no, I know it. I know,
I know they're dying. It's still removed from most people, though. It's still just I don't know, even if it's this news story that they see, because who knows what shows up in their feed. I don't know what people know. It's like, but I don't know. And I'm thinking about, like, for example, his immigration horridness and like the lack of understanding that immigrants contribute billions of dollars to our economy every year, and that like
and pay taxes
and pay like the like and like I remember learning this when I was in high school, like, and when I learned it, I was like, oh, okay, well, I remember I was naive. I was like, well, people should know this then, and why is this even an issue? Like, you have to understand the nuance of how like weird shit works in our economy, and like how
if they
immigrants actually fill a role in that. And yeah,
and he wants to get rid of the Department of Education. So I mean,
oh yeah,
we are
exactly. I
only
mean, yeah,
we are literally like there's a part, and again, I might be the nihilist on this panel, and I'm okay with that. But like what I see is we might be as enlightened as we're ever going to be. If he gets rid of the Department of Education, we already have critical race theory, the scary word that's actually just history. Like if this might be as enlightened as we will ever be.
I want to presence what you just said too, because I don't disagree with Lisa. So we should maybe just end there. Just kidding. But it's so true. When you bring up immigration, the fear is what they got to before anyone gave a shit about themselves or anyone else. They just went into this fear of other, which is again women and people who, you know, don't look like them. I mean, it's a total known fact that he has had people for dinner that are just known white supremacists and, you know, people preserving of white culture. My friend, who is first generation Filipino, his parents are proud Republicans and immigrants, and he is a immigration lawyer who makes a ton of money when someone like Trump, you know, is in office. He wrote Tuesday morning, I'll never vote for a racist. A racist can say whatever he wants, but he will never have my interests in mind, nor will he have yours unless you're a rich white male, and only if you shower him with praise. It literally makes me laugh when he sees other, you know, people of color and other minorities support this guy who would piss on their graves if he had a chance. And he also said, I survived and fought Trump every day during the first immigration terror reign. I fought cases through trial, appeal, and Ninth Circuit. Many, though not all, are currently still in court, and some of those actually have green cards now. It was miserable, and yet every time there was a story of, you know, just absolute cruelty. So, which is interesting, and I'll stop there. I could say more, but what's interesting is they were like, he's going to do mass deportations. Do you know who deported more people than anyone was Obama? People don't realize that. Like, there was a lot of deportations, but they were, and I'm not even going to go into were they more humane. There was a lot of horrible stuff about every single administration, both sides, that, you know, where immigration's been really fucked up. But people don't realize is he has a very ineffective, expensive plan that doesn't accomplish what they think it's going to accomplish. And yet they voted for that over their own autonomy. And so, like, again, we can't underestimate the fact that, like, they have just, and you're right, probably with the outside world, they've just been festering all this fear. So nobody can trust themselves, and they just want to give all their power away. So I'm sorry I went off on a tangent, but it drives me crazy when conservatives think that they're the only ones who know how to deal with an immigration problem, as they call it.
I'm with you.
And I'm not for deportations, but I'm just saying it's so fucking ignorant.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a way to do immigration. Do we have an immigration issue in this country? Probably. You know, we have the Statue of Liberty that says, bring us your weary, bring us your poor. I think one of the most affecting things I keep seeing on the socials is the Statue of Liberty with her hands and her face in her hands, you know. What blows my mind about immigration is, and I was just at an event over the weekend because November is Native American Awareness Month, or I don't know exactly the title of it, but we were at an event at the Autry Museum over the weekend, and if you are not a Native American, you are an immigrant. Period.
Yeah.
You aren't from here. America for Americans, then we all need to get the fuck out because we are not Native American. Stephen Miller can suck a big dick.
Yeah.
Sorry. People say explicit on your pod.
He can eat a dick.
You can see Native American people out there being like, been through this before.
Yeah. Yep. Been there, done that.
Yeah. It goes back to people adopt philosophies that, you know, support their way of life, not the other way around. It's a very convenient philosophy to put yourself on top, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's that piece. I mean, Elijah, I assume you've read Cast by Elizabeth Wilkerson.
I have not. I know. I have to own it. Sorry, y'all.
No. It's okay. But what I love about that book.
I need to read it.
Is it's such an easy read, and that sounds weird,
no,
but she writes in in a way that is so easy to understand. And the bottom line of it is the reason even the poorest white people still think of themselves as a higher caste than Obama, right? And so they will vote against their own best interest to, in fact, still proclaim to be a higher caste, right? So that's it is such a good book, and it is such an easy read and I say easy in that it makes such a complicated subject so easy to understand. It looks at what we do here in the United States in comparison to India and to Germany. And the interesting thing, I'm blowing some of this for you, Elijah, but the interesting thing about it is Germany came to us and said, I see how you're handling civil rights and slavery and all of that after the Civil War. We want to mirror that. So Germany, Nazi came to America and asked for our playbook and then went to and did it in Nazi Germany. And specifically, obviously, against Jews, whereas we were doing it against African Americans. I thought my head was going to pop off when I read that. But that to me, that says everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sums it up, doesn't it?
It does.
It's so fucking disturbing and
Mm-hmm.
depressing. And I mean, I'm not shocked because
Nobody gets to be shocked anymore.
Nobody gets to be shocked anymore.
I mean, there is a part that I get, again, I referenced this phrase, the manosphere, earlier, but that is the thing I think we miscalculated. I was saying all up into Tuesday at 8 o'clock Pacific time that the polls were wrong. They weren't talking to the right people that were voting for her. And my statement is true. The polls were wrong, but they were not talking to the manosphere. They were not talking to the followers of Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and all those fucking assholes. And that's the part. And even Liam, who is not part of the manosphere, and Liam is my son, is not part of the manosphere at all. He was like, "That's what we underestimated," and I think that's exactly right. And yet, if you listen to the news, they were talking about it. They were talking about the young angry white man, the young ones. And I don't know. I did a lot of la 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 la. And that's I think what we missed in the polls.
Yeah, it's terribly frightening. Yes.
Again, these things are early, so we're bookmarking it, but curious for the actual granular data. But like he did better in a lot of states. He got a much higher margin of young voters. That was shocking to me. Yeah. But then maybe not, right? Because like there's a lot of young people out there who I think erroneously, that he's going to do better with the two, wars happening. And oh again, God. That's just freaking crazy. Yeah. And then I also want to bookmark this because I have no theories, no answers. But I heard it from my friend the other day, the immigration lawyer I was talking to about just staff in his office. I heard it a lot while I was in Arizona, and then we've seen it in the polls that in marriages, in Latin marriages, like Latino men were voting for him and the wives were voting for her. I'm fascinated by that. So those are split votes, and obviously I don't know what you actually officially call it, but a household split. And there was a lot of things where we could see as we were going to register voters in Arizona, we could see who was a Democrat, who was other, and who was a Republican. And there was a lot of families that had both. So registered in both parties. It was interesting.
There was an interesting interview a month or 6 weeks ago on MSNBC with Maria Teresa Kumar, and she was talking about that exact thing. She said, what she was really hoping the point that could get across to Latino men was, your mothers ran the household, your wives ran the household. Why do you think a woman can't lead? Because your whole life, women have led your households. And she was really stressing that needed to be something that needed to be imparted on Latino men. And apparently we didn't do a good enough job of that.
Okay, actually, let's talk about this. I think this is a really interesting question. And I think it totally reflects what we're seeing in terms of patriarchy, right? And what has been called in the Latino community machismo, and people feeling threatened. So white men in particular, but all men, maybe I can't say all men. So many men feeling threatened by what they see not only as their power being eroded, but here's a thought that I've often had when I think about men in 2024 and what they have to deal with. And we talk about how the patriarchy hurts men as well. And men have been raised in the patriarchy, just as women have, but they've been told, okay, here's how you be a man. And you are allowed to feel like this spectrum of emotion right here. It's very small. You can't see my fingers, those of you that are listening, but it's like you can feel a certain amount of emotion, but you can't cry. You can't feel sad. You can't feel anxious. You can feel angry and you can feel lust. That's sort of like what makes you a man. And you have to provide and you have to, you're in charge. There's like all this, there's like a list of things through the cultural narrative that men receive about how to be a man. Now, obviously, in any particular area, family, there's other messages they're going to receive, but like there's this general messaging about how to be a man. So then men grow up and they're like, okay, I'm being a man like you told me to be. And now you're telling me I'm toxic and fucked up and that I'm doing it wrong. Well, fuck you. Fuck you. I now own your body forever because fuck you. I've had to sacrifice, I mean, they don't think this, of course, but they've had to sacrifice their humanity in order to be a man in the way that our culture has told them to be. And I'm saying things in a slightly extreme way to make a point, but I also think it's a very valid truth.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because Lisa and I had a recent conversation on I don't think it's come out yet, just about our generation too. And it's interesting how this is all happening right now in our adulthood, but how most of our generation suppressed the right to need, right? Like that birthright to need. And we were raised, women too, to like not trust emotions and to be like that we're thinking beings. And I forget who Brené Brown refers to the person who said this. So I'll find the quote for you later because I can't remember. But like we were raised to think you are thinking beings and emotions get in the way when really we are emotional beings with occasional thoughts, and those can distort things. And so the fact that we got to this place where we like it's just inherent in our culture that emotions are messy and that women are like it's negative that like we're too emotional to be president, which is just so fucking ridiculous because oh my god, look who's there. And that emotions are weak, needing is weak, and like that we've raised just crops and crops of men to think you're supposed to provide and not be emotional and anything else is weak. Everything else is scary. Everything else is a threat to that. And then if they start to feel stuff, right, then they're like actually not even trusting themselves, and then they're pissed off because we've done that to them, right? So it is fascinating that you say that because I think there's got to be, and I'm sure I just haven't come across it yet. There's got to be a real depiction of this in sociology around like how we got here, because it is so freaking toxic, and then they're feeling like victims.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also, like a year ago or whatever, we did a pod called Gen X Men, and oddly, it is our most other than I think, well, maybe one or two. It is our most popular pod on YouTube, and we had men responding to it, and I would get the emails, and I'd go, oh God, like I'd brace myself, like what are they going to say? And it was actually all really interesting feedback. I assume just because it was Gen X, that's how it got in the Google sphere or whatever. But yeah, that was a really popular YouTube pod in any case. But the feedback we were getting from these men were like, yeah, what you're saying is right, and our premise, if I remember correctly, again, it's been a year or so ago, was, Gen X men in particular, coupled with the right to need piece of it, they are sandwiched between boomers and millennials, Gen Z, and millennials and Gen Z, I think, to some extent, although now everything is a little topsy-turvy for me, understand emotions and that men don't have to be the providers and that sort of thing.
They're less threatened.
Yeah. They're less threatened. And poor Gen X men, and I don't say that demeaning them, but just like, they're like, but my dad did this, but my son wants to do this. Like, where do I go? What do I do? And so they're this, like, they're being squeezed in such a weird way. And, I mean, again, the polls show that Gen X voted against her.
I know.
Interesting.
What's interesting too about that episode, which is like so many for Lisa and I, and like our whole pod, like we went into it with just a little bit of eye rolling about the Gen X men we know and love, and then it was going to be funny, and we really came through it with a lot of compassion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we always think we're going to be snarky.
I know. And then we're like, oh.
I know, totally.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm gonna just circle back. I feel like there's a lot more we can talk about, and I think we've already agreed we're gonna do a part two to this conversation. So yay. Um, just thinking about misogyny, thinking about patriarchy as the policing arm of misogyny is the policing arm of patriarchy.
Patriarchy.
Yes. Yep.
And let's just kind of round up things here by talking about my paradigm of the patriarchy that I have put forth, is, this idea that we're told that women are we're competition. Women are each other's competition, right? And that it's brilliant. It's a brilliant narrative of the patriarchy because, as you guys comment in your podcast episode that I will be linking here, when women come together, it's electric, it's powerful. We are so powerful together. Part of like under the archetype of the feminine, and archetype is separate, from gender, but it's like things that we consider feminine is community and togetherness. And it's so powerful. And I also want to point out that I think for white Western European women, and there could be this type of thing in all cultures, but I can't speak to it. I can only speak to this. The witch wound sort of in this really fucking brilliant way started this because the church, i.e. the patriarchy, essentially in Europe, started burning women at the stake, and encouraged people to turn in witches, right? So your neighbor, the women in your community became suspect, right? So brilliant because the women that were healers, you guys already know this, the women that were healers, which were considered witches, which it wasn't a bad word the way it is now. In fact, at that time is when this caricature of like women with big noses and warty skin and all that was propaganda that started during witch burning time. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. But you couldn't try. Your best friend could turn against you if you slighted her or something. So mistrust was sown into things, and we carry that in our DNA. We also, the witch wound also is a big thing. Like we are afraid to speak our truths because we get burned at the stake, right? So there's a lot to that we're not going to get into right now. But my point is, it's brilliant that it keeps us apart. If we look at women as competition, it keeps us apart. And it's one thing I want to have a call to action is like start noticing when you're criticizing other women. Start noticing when you're holding other women in judgment. And like a really obvious way this comes up, I've talked about this before, is when we start thinking we have the right to criticize other women and how they look and what they've done with maybe plastic surgery, fillers, Botox, or anything else. And we think, oh, well, that looks terrible and whatever. And I get to say something about it. And it's like, nope, that's the patriarchy saying we have any say over women's bodies whatsoever. We don't. Women get to do what we want. We own our bodies, and we get to, well, theoretically, we own our bodies.
We do for now.
We do for now.
Couple more months.
Some women do. Yeah. Anyway, my point is it's insidious and it shows up in a lot of places, even for those of us that are most aware. Now for the positive part. Let's come together. That's what I want to talk about.
Maybe this goes along with
keeping each other apart, and let's come together. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, sorry about that. This kind of goes along with like the turn of the tide. I was listening to that and having a little trouble with some of that right now. But what's fascinating to me is that, there's this narrative that we're there to tear down something or take something away. When if you really look at that, when we come together, we're really all about just lifting each other up and saying like we all, like, there's infinite power when we support each other. There is no like us over you. We don't want to gain power and castrate you. There is this projection of distrust and evil because it's in them, but we don't it's just like women want to support each other and make it okay for everybody to have a seat at the table. And I just think that gets lost.
Yeah. I mean, right now, well, first off, I want to say you, Elijah, you really enlightened me around that whole piece around plastic surgery. I have fallen down that trap with a few celebrities in the past, and it always comes from in the time it came from a place of like, you're supposed to be this strong woman. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to fit into a patriarchal idea of what a woman should look like, right? So in my mind, I was coming from the right heart space, but I understand it now, and I'm very grateful to you for that. Um, where I am struggling now, and I hope to be able to get out of this, but where I am struggling now is with women who are voting against their sisters. My favorite song right now is We Pray by Coldplay, and Little Sims says, "Let me speak my truth and keep my sisters alive." And that is, and I do mean when I say that, because that is, I literally think maybe my place, the reason I'm on this earth, is to speak my truth and keep my sisters alive. I mean every sister. I mean every woman who voted red, every color, every sexual identity, whether you're biologically a woman or you are a trans woman. I want to keep you alive. And so, while right now I am really struggling with these women who claim to be pro life, I always call them anti choice, but they're pro birth, as Kari said, no question, because once they're out, you're on your own. I am
Right.
really struggling with those women right now. Um, and I am okay with struggling with that right now.
Yeah. I
Same.
just want to say this is about holding more than one thing at once, which is like
True.
angry at you. I'm hurt by you. I don't understand you.
I'm baffled.
I'm baffled. And I still
And I'm pissed.
want to do what I can to protect you and all women.
Absolutely.
I was with a group of women in Arizona when we were doing what we were doing, like the get out the vote the one day and then poll monitoring. And at some point, I texted the group because in the morning, I mean, it's dark and, supposedly there's people from both sides. We weren't supposed to identify ourselves, but everyone on the other side was handing out like a lot of voter guides, but it was all mega, like, how to go red down the whole ticket. And they were so suspicious that we weren't handing out similar stuff. And we were like, that's not what we're here for. We were actually told that we're just here to be neutral, just to make sure people, and you want me here to make sure you're not suppressing voters, right? Or intimidating voters. And they're like, yeah. So it's funny. In the morning, like I could kind of be with the avuncular behavior of these older guys. And then as soon as the women showed up, around 10 a.m. and they were like going up to people's cars and they were bright red and all this stuff. Like I really was struggling. And I texted the women, like, I got to self-examine why they bother me more. They bother me so much more. And I'm like, no, I don't. I know why. Because they don't, like, they're literally hurting themselves. And it's just so like hard for me to hold that in my body and be around it. And we didn't even interchange, but I could hear them, referring to us as communists, which was hilarious. But I couldn't even, like, one of them said thank you for being here, while she was holding up her anti-abortion stuff. But that's
They're
about
hurting
it.
themselves, but again, they don't realize that. So what they do realize is, I think, my feeling is they realize they're hurting others and they don't care. So you're right. Two things can be true. Any woman who is pro-birth right now, if she came to me and said, and this actually happened to my sister. If I may, she met a new neighbor. This was years ago. She had met a new neighbor, and for some reason, she shared with her neighbor that she had to terminate a pregnancy because of a severe birth defect for her son. And um, lo and behold, and at the time, the woman said, "Yeah, she was pregnant, but she felt like something was wrong." And lo and behold, a couple weeks later, the husband showed up on my sister's doorstep, bawling and saying, you know, uh, "You're the only one we know that we can talk to about this," because they were pro-life.
Mm.
And so my sister went over and helped, and
Mm.
and supported her through the process. And then my sister went into a party about a month ago, and they were in full MAGA. And Amy thought she was going to lose her mind. She literally looked at him and was like, "Are you serious right now?" And so I would do the same.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no question. you can vote Trump till you're red in the face. And if you need my help when it comes to your bodily autonomy, I will be there. I will drop any anger I have towards you and support you. So I can say that without a shadow of a doubt.
Oh shit, sister. That's uh okay. Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe today there's not much more to say.
Well, if I may, we talked right before
Please.
that we wanted to come up with sort of a like, what's next? How do we help? And I said before we started recording, I don't think, as coaches, we live in the space of we don't need to know the how. And so I think that would be my last piece that I'd like to offer is
Yeah.
that as you listen to this and continue to listen to Elijah's brilliant podcast and maybe join Kari and I over at ours,
And your brilliant podcast, yes.
thank you. We don't need to know the how because I do think the how is different for every single person, and I am 100% against bypassing any anger, sadness, fear that anybody is having. I know all three of us live in that space. So if right now, as you're listening to this, you're still angry and you're still pissed and you're still like, fuck all that, good.
Good.
And let that flow through you because you will get to the other side much faster. When I say I'm in a very nihilistic mood, I am owning that because there's no point in me trying to be different. I will get out of it faster if I allow it to be.
Yeah. And I suspect there's more grieving to come and more anger to come and more nihilism to come and more fear to come. It's not a one and done.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
I think that we're going to continue to be depressed or horrified or both with what we're learning from all this. And you're right, there's room for all of that as long as like I can't remember like it's like as long as like we stay vigilant at like redirecting it and not capitulating and not giving up. And that's really hard right now. Because like you said earlier, Lisa, sometimes I'm just, like I've talked before about my middle seat mentality. Like when I get put in a middle seat, because I had to a lot growing up when we were flying standby, where you just sort of in between, like often two big men or something, and they're taking over the armrests and stuff. And like, did you even think about that? There's like a person sitting here. But like that is such a metaphor for me in all this. Like I really learned how to just like go small and breathe and get myself through it. And like I know how to do that, and it's really tempting to do that, and my privilege would allow me to do that. My kids are horrified and sad and upset, but they're really aware it doesn't affect them as white males as much as it's going to affect all the people that care about, and even the people they don't know. So like I could do that. I could just do my middle seat mentality, and it's really tempting. And yet like it when someone else says that, I'm like, no. Like, no, you can't. Take as much time as you need, but like we really need to stay vigilant.
We do. And we need to like come together. We can't, I guess I don't want to say we can't do it alone, but we
shouldn't have to do it alone.
We shouldn't have to. It's exhausting. It's not sustainable. Let's come together. Let's come together. Let's come together. Let's figure out ways to come together. Yeah. We don't have to know how right now, but let's have that
and have an open seat at the table for the women who, as they realize what their new reality is going to be, because they will, that they are welcome.
That's right. That's amen, sister. A woman, really sister. Good. Yes. I love you both so much. Speaking of coming together, what would I do without you, without our text thread with Melissa, without I haven't even talked about our tech. There's I'll link the episode that you guys did with me and Melissa, actually. So sisterhood. That you can hear our history. The sisterhood episode. Yeah. What would I do? I hope everybody out there has at least one or two people to talk to, but certainly come talk to us. DM me. DM Kari, DM Lisa.
This thread started 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean,
Our
our
text thread.
thread,
Yeah. Our text
our
thread.
thread was because of Trump.
Because of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That just hit me and it just spurted it out and interrupted you. Sorry. You're right.
Please interrupt.
DMS.
I am so
But
glad you interrupted.
also, oh my God, it just occurred to me like,
Yeah.
yeah, we are a Trump fueled text thread. That's so weird.
And
Yep.
hallelujah.
And hallelujah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys. So much to say. So we'll come back together again. And I just am grateful and I love you. And to everybody out there listening that cares and gives a shit and is feeling grief and rage and fear, you're not alone. You're so not alone. And I know we're going to be doing all we can to make sure you're not alone and to make sure we're not alone. Like, yeah, let's be together. So that's all I got for now. And maybe that's all I need to have for now. Yeah. Okay. Love y'all.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.